Welcome, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our Sunday Truth Talk. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm an energy healer, an energy coach, and also a teacher, in which capacity I will present to you today's topic, namely what these corona nightmares truly are, at least for some of us, and what this has to do with etheric energies, with etheric attacks. And therefore, I want to send out a little warning here for all of you. I've written a very detailed article that I send out to all my subscribers. So if you want to get this pre-warning of what the subjects are for the next Sunday Truth Talk, then I suggest that you sign up for my email list or follow me here on Facebook. And in that, I have already made the connection between these extremely lucid, extremely tormenting dreams that we have, these nightmares that we have currently here, April 2020, in this situation of collective uncertainty and fear. And the topics that I am covering with you here today, and by the way, I want to thank all of you who have submitted questions to me up front. This was very helpful in finding out what it actually is that you are interested in. So keep asking questions. I'm doing this live so that you can interact with me, so that you can ask questions. But the topics that I am going to cover with you here all are supposed to lead to empowerment, to help, to guide you and support you with these topics, these deeper aspects of the human consciousness or being human altogether that are really difficult to talk about. And of course, my main objective is always to help you understand that you are not alone, all right? And that these cognitive dissonances, these inner questions that you have, and maybe where you doubt yourself, that these are normal too, but that the only way how you can actually work through them is to face some of that. And how do I approach this? Obviously, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher. And so today you're going to see me here as basically teacher of the defense against the dark arts, namely covering subjects such as what is dark art, what are etheric energies, what is darkness, what are nightmares, what are etheric attacks, what is all this unseen that we are so afraid of. And if this makes you cringe a little bit, I want you to know that this is normal. But if you come in with a bias, if you want to get things such as fake positivity from me, then this is not for you. If you are a scientist, or if you have an intellectual, rational mind, and you think that all this is woo-woo anyway, then this will not be for you. I can tell you, though, that this is probably the most scientific way anybody has ever explained this to you. And those of you who are part of a specific mystic school or have religious beliefs that feel like what I'm saying is contrary to your beliefs, then you might also feel a lot of inner resistance here. And this is okay for me, all right? So if you want to grow, if you want to sort of shed light into the parts that are responsible for you being afraid of the unknown, you suffering from those night terrors, all right, then it requires you to get past some of these initial ego filters, okay? The ego's main function, all right, is to avoid the unknown and to gravitate towards certainty. So this is why we like hearing things that we already know. But it also prevents us to grow. So I want you guys to just stay open, and you can always interact with me here. I am the creator of many, many training courses, training programs, because I understand the learning curve when it comes to spiritual learning versus intellectual learning, all right? So there is information here for you that takes years and years to process and to internalize, which is also why you find so few publications that actually are in a more sort of rational and scientific way, because we're tapping into the human unconscious, we're tapping into mythology and mysticism, and they are lingering in the more subconscious or in the unseen. Now, luckily, the scientific paradigm right now is shifting towards acknowledging things such as, quantum reality. Okay, so we're going quantum. And by the way, if you have tuned in here a little later, I would suggest that you rewind just so that you get the way I've ordered this and built this up in my capacity as a teacher, because I do understand all the resistances that we run into. But it's really important to understand that when we talk about things such as beings and entities and etheric attacks, and how to protect ourselves from the unseen, so to speak, and how to build our etheric immune system, and how to learn all this, that we have to first overcome this fear of the unknown. And remember, ask questions. The only way for us to learn and to internalize new information is through asking a lot of questions. The second aspect then is to actually allow ourselves to fully experience it ourselves. And this is what I do here at transCODES. In fact, we actually have an intensive going on right now that deals with etheric protection. And this is all public. Can all be read. This can all be experienced by yourself. It's wonderful. So this is the beauty here of speaking with you live in these Sunday Truth Talks. And the way I have created all of the Truth Talks is by topic, which means that there is a reason, even if I talk about things that come, that are just going on here in our normal lives, that produce something of a library for you, an archive to look back and to learn about certain topics. All right, so I would strongly recommend to you, if this whole topic is new for you and you come with more questions or more fears than you had before you started listening to me, that you go back and go through the playlist. All right, there's hours and hours. And if you want to go a step farther, we have a live Skype thread where these things are being discussed. We have a forum for energetically sensitives where there's so much information, in the YouTube channel, obviously, that has free training courses and so forth. So I want you guys to understand that part of this teaching that I do is really based on transparency, and this is why the information is so unusual. Not to tap myself on the shoulder here, but there aren't many energy healers who actually structure this and reveal this like I do. Okay, so you will hear things maybe for the first time, or you will hear things that you've heard in other contices. And this is really the part here that you need to understand, that when we're talking about the unseen, when we're talking about the subtle aspects of life, all right, the parts that we cannot really prove with our five senses, all right, that we need to first build a lingo, we need to build a roadmap somehow. And this is what is going on right now here through the scientific community, slowly recognizing that there's a lot more than just objectivity. There is also a learning that happens through our subjectivity, through our personal experience. And this is very, very important to understand if you want to understand the dynamics of etheric, of subtle energies, because it isn't that easy to say just because I am not seeing it, it doesn't exist. We have real life examples right now with the virus. Nobody sees the virus, and yet it was possible to, or was able, had the power to stop everything here, and to have an impact on our economy, to have an impact on how we see the world and ourselves in this. It is currently impacting everybody on this planet. And this leads to a lot of internal stress, right? And obviously, part of our nightmares is just that, the shift in perspective, the shift in routines, the confrontation with the unknown. All right? And the best way to lose our fear and to build resilience, to feel competent that we can deal with the situation no matter what it brings, even though it's uncertain, is through learning, is through educating ourselves. Because guess what, guys? Nightmares, all right, they only have a power over us if we are afraid of them. And this is the problem with the unknown, with the unseen, with the subtle energies. They can only have power over you. And I want you to listen very, very closely if you are unconscious and if you are afraid of them. So just because these energies, are now maybe for you a little more sensible, you can sense them more in your night terrors, doesn't mean that they haven't been there before. There's a reason why we have created this hashtag Corona Nightmares. This isn't a hashtag that I created. This is a phenomenon that is going all around the world, and that is that people in masses experience these night terrors right now, and they feel extremely lucid and extremely tormenting. Let me know, guys, if you are having similar experiences and if you need assistance with this. I also offer energy coaching. Obviously, that is a part of the teaching, but the point here being that I am also available for emergency assistance. I offer free energy coaching for those in need, and obviously also free energy healing sessions here on transCODES. So let me get straight to the defense against the dark arts. So just to scare away the last few of you that don't want to hear anything about this. All right, obviously you see I have a smile on my face, so I'm not actually seeing this, and we are, when we think of these things, I'm not seeing it this way. And when we think of dark arts and the defense against this, we obviously have things in our heads, movies, Harry Potter, things like this, where we have a certain context, all right, that we give this content. And I would like you to, or I would like to invite you here to let go of this context and follow me here through the breakdown of what these things are. So let's start with what nightmares are. Okay, there's a psychological view, and that is obviously that we have to mentally, emotionally recycle a lot of things that are happening in our lives, especially when new things come in. But it's a maintenance thing of our brain, that it has to recycle, that it has to process things, and this is mainly what we experience as dreams. So when we sleep, our brain, but also our nervous system, and unbeknownst to many, also our etheric immune system recovers. It recycles itself, and it has to go through certain things that we have a certain emotional attachment to. So in other words, it is very common to experience dreams that somehow process something that you went through during the day or in your week, and they can turn into nightmares when they tap into some of the parts that are hard for you to process, where you were afraid of, or where there's an unresolved matter, or, and this is the part here that leads us into the more energetic point of view, when there are things that you are resisting, or that you are refusing, or that you are escaping from, or that you are repressing. Still, this is a psychological effect here that we have to, go through these unprocessed things in these various sleep cycles that we have. And part of the reason why there is increased nightmares right now is obviously the change in routine and the confrontation with all the unknown and the uncertainties. But there also is another reason, and this is the part here where it gets tricky, where it gets quantum. All right, so there is also a very dark band of energies around the whole entire human collective. And let me explain first what these collective energies are and how they relate with our personal energies. This is also a concept that has first been investigated by philosophers, and Carl Jung, probably one of the most prominent psychologists, like right around 100 years ago, Sigmund Freud as well, where it is obvious that our thinkingness and the way we contextualize and interpret things does not just come from within ourselves. It also taps into something that could be called the collective conscious or the collective unconscious, really. And the problem with dreams is that because it turns off all our higher cognitive functions, right, is that we are more likely, to go into our collective unconscious. This happens to us while we're awake as well. By the way, most people are not aware of this. Only 7% of the thoughts that you have are actually your own. 93% of all thoughts you have are actually stemming from this sort of condition, this collective condition, this field of thinkingness, all right, this collective thought field around you. This is mind-boggling, really, because our ego does not like to hear this. Obviously, it wants to call dibs on every thought that you have, and it always thinks that it had, or that you have had this thought for the very first time. Well, let me assure you that there's barely any thought that you've had that wasn't thought before, and that is stored in the collective unconscious. So when we actually go unconscious, so even though this happens to us when we are awake, which has to do with the level of consciousness that we have, but when we literally go unconscious, through our dreams, we are now more exposed to it. And it is obvious that in times like this, that there is a stronger culmination of this. Everybody thinks about fear and uncertainty right now, and you can, even if you're not, really into these kind of things, you can see how if everybody thinks about the same thing, that it creates a more dense, a darker sort of field around you. It's just like with low and high pressure areas that move through our weather systems. Okay, so these are part of the outer conditions, the outer weather conditions. In my weekly energy tips here for people that want to go into more detail every week on Patreon, I often refer to this as the energetic weather conditions. So etheric energies are really just the descriptor. Okay, it's a word that describes not just what is actually happening right now and what we can, see through the news. It describes what is really going on, all the thoughts, all the emotions, all the dreams, all the things that are basically sent out through each and every person here on this planet and the planet itself. And of course, and many of you who are into astrology know this as well, there's also interaction with other planets and their fields, all right? And this is then where we, can learn about other consciousness. We can learn that, for instance, these interactions between planets, all right, that they have an impact on our psyche as well, all right? So this is then astrology, and astrology is based on a sacred science of measuring these impacts, okay? And it uses mythology to produce sort of a roadmap, to produce something like a lexicon of terms, all right? And this is relatively close really to etheric energy, so that's why the energetic view often coincides with astrology, simply because astrology is the science that has measured it and has, basically formed, statistics of thousands of years that can predict things for us. So some of our dreams also tap into this precognitive function that our brain has. And this is actually also something that science has developed or discovered now, that whether we are aware of it or not as humans, we are tapping into precognition. We are tapping into the future here. And it manifests in our language without us being aware of it. It also manifests in our dreams. All right. So this is all part of what we could understand as collective energies. And if we look at it through the etheric lens, all right, and this is something that only people who actually train this part of their own inner etheric intelligence can prove, all right, and can reproduce, which is why this is not quite accepted through science yet, namely the reproducibility of this, okay. We have to use our subjective experience to form our inner lexicon of sensations and learn about energies from within ourselves. So this is where we can see that without a paradigm shift of how we look at energies, it will be very difficult to understand. So if I lost you here because you're running into, this type of cognitive dissonance that I mentioned here in the beginning, then don't worry, because one of the main things that we learn when we go into higher learning, or spiritual learning, if you will, versus intellectual learning, is that the hardest part really is to bypass the mind, because the mind, our brain functions, our neurology can only get us so far. And when it comes to exploring the deeper aspects of the human consciousness, we actually run into some of the blocks and some of the filters and some of the things that actually don't allow us to go beyond what the mind, contextualizes. But one way to overcome this, guys, or an example here is that, if you only rely on your mind as the part in you that can learn, then you are inevitably restricted to your own experience and your own maturity. Even if you have studied every single book in this world, all right, you will never really be able to contextualize things from within the deeper or the higher aspect of your consciousness if you are not willing to go beyond the filters and the bias of your mind. So this is also the reason why etheric learning, this higher learning, requires so much practice, because it is not a fixed trait. It is something that we have to cultivate. All right, this is very important to understand. But there's also the good news, because this means everyone can learn it. Everyone can train to see and understand energies, and through forming this new inner lexicon, this new roadmap. It's just that we need to use a different organ, a different tool for that than we were conditioned to use. We have to use our holistic system. We have to use everything, our body, our senses, our heart, and also our spiritual understanding. Then, because these things all help us to see the larger context. So if we don't want to be limited by our mind, no matter how far we've developed our mind, then we are beginning to understand why things such as energetic sensitivity and spiritual emergence are things that are really sort of part of our human collective evolution right now. It is basically sort of the next step for us as humans to understand that the mind is cool and all, and that it can bring us a lot of cool inventions and progress and technology and all that, but that it also has limitations. How can I say this? Because right now, and this is the beauty actually of this corona situation, we are experiencing the limitations. All these things that we have taken for granted as sort of the highest level of, what humans can be, all right, what we have regarded as the highest expression of us, namely technology and pharmacy and all these kind of things, they're not helping us right now. They're not helping us to get through those kind of shifts or evolutionary transitions. All right, we have to resort to a different part in us, and this comes through inner connection. And the answer here, just so you know, is your heart, is your heart field. In fact, science has already made strides to prove that there is another type of intelligence in us. And this is also something that I would like to invite you to read up and look at things such as the Heart Math Institute and so forth, who've collected a really beautiful library of what this actually means to tap into your heart's intelligence. And heart is not the same as emotions, guys. So here we got to be careful. And this is why I often differentiate between our psyche, the psychological aspect, which includes our body, mind, and emotions, and our consciousness, which stands outside of that, but also, of course, entails all aspects of our psyche. So that's why the bypassing of the mind, and sometimes also some of our physiological and emotional patterns, is essential for this higher learning. So when we talk about energetic sensitivity, a term that I have used frequently here over the last 10 years, I am referring to something that is emerging, spontaneously emerging now worldwide in everybody, not everybody, but in all different cultures, countries, and so forth. It has nothing to do with the belief system, really. It is us humans awakening to a new reality. All right, there is a new unseen reality, and that is the subject here really of this topic: the unseen, the quantum, the subtle. And I typically refer to those as etheric energies. All right, so Ron, you are asking a really, really good question. What about cellular memories? Okay, so we're getting deeper into the subject matter here now. Cellular memories are very complex. We have a physiological memory. That means that we have a certain neurotransmitters that are produced in certain kind of situation. We have a neurological development where things can be conditioned and hardwired in us. So let's say you look at something or you smell something, so you have a certain sensual information come in, it reminds you of something. So there's a very sort of technical version of a cellular memory that is really just referring to some of the conditioned ways of how you perceive things up until the age of 8, for the most part. Then we have a cellular memory that is acquired throughout our life experience. A very good example here is trauma. So every time we experience, something that really, really sort of gets us, that rocks our boat, that creates a lot of stress, that has a very, very strong emotional, physical, or mental impact on us, our body stores this as like, you got to be careful about this. This is the red flags, and this is part of our ego. Our ego's purpose is to prevent, threats, to help us to get out of, danger. It's there for us to secure our physical and our psychological survival. It also can be in the form of PTSD, for instance, as an example, be a restriction. So when we run into a cellular, like a trauma memory, all right, then it can block us, and it can even go as far as blocking our body. This is part of what happens during our nightmares, guys, all right? During our nightmares, this cellular memory is accessed because we are not there with our ego mind to, do something about it or to contextualize it in a different way. There is another form of cellular memory that is just now being discovered, and that has to do with genetics and epigenetics and the whole area of mitochondrial DNA. So there is a memory in us that is intergenerational, that gets inherited from one generation to the other, and this is how I also explain, how human consciousness evolution, or the evolution of the human consciousness, actually occurs. It occurs through, this continual increase in a collective experiences, all right, that then gets not just etherically, but also literally, in our DNA, gets encoded in a certain part in our DNA, not in our stem cells, but in our mitochondrial DNA, that then sort of allows the next generation to benefit from this, all right, to become upgraded, all right. So, sorry for the lengthy answer here to your question, but that actually leads me to what all this evolution of consciousness and spiritual emergence is really about. It's about us to evolve into our highest expression, and the very thing that drives nature is driven by, and it doesn't matter how you contextualize this, if you have a religious or whatever that your sort of cognitive bias is, whatever your mind, however your mind contextualizes it, but the truth of the matter is that we observe concepts such as evolution and constant correction and constant betterment and constant expansion and constant sort of reinvention, okay, this so-called cycle of life over and over in nature. And here is also where these concepts of self-healing come in, because whether it's nature itself, one of the beautiful testaments of this corona situation now is how overall, everywhere in the world, nature is sort of taking back over, how animals are coming back to places where they couldn't be before because there was too many cars or too many people, where the pollution is reduced to a point that marine animals come back to certain parts of the ocean and so forth. This is a wonderful proof, really, for what I'm saying, namely that there is a continual cycle of renewal and self-healing, and we as humans have this as well. So a big part of this etheric and spiritual learning, guys, is about recognizing that our powers here, our self-healing powers, our abilities are much more than we thought they were. It's only the bias that we have, the restriction that we see through our mind and through seeing us as a 3D being, yes, as a body, as a piece of material, solid piece, by just focusing on the physicality of our existence, all right, which also links into the mortality issue that the ego has to deal with, namely, the problem that as soon as we recognize this, that we are just a body, then we also have to overcome our fears of the death. And here is really where spiritual and higher learning and learning about etheric energies can help us, because when we understand that we are indeed actually a consciousness, a sovereign entity, all right, a soul with a body and not a body with a soul, then we begin to understand that the world that we are in, the world that we perceive through our 3D lens, all right, that this is really just a very small part of a greater reality, all right, because we, as humans, we cannot pretend that we have brought this all into creation. And this is then, where sort of a spiritual contextualization is needed. It is needed for us to include the spiritual. And in the past, all the spiritual learning was, again, here filtered and often also distorted through esoteric mysticism and specialness, all right? And I want to define this for you here as well. Esoteric means accessible only for chosen ones or only for a few. And, to break this down here, you have to understand that this spiritual emergence and the interest that we have and our ability to even resonate with information like this, like the things that I'm talking about right now, that wasn't there before, all right? So, even people like Nostradamus or the great philosophers in the Greek philosophers, or the Egyptians or the Persians, in the past, they had to code their information. It had to be coded in a way because it could not, be part of the collective knowledge yet. Besides, people didn't really have access or couldn't even read, for the longest time in our human evolution. So this is a completely new phenomenon, guys. I really need you to understand this, that we have something like esoteric information accessible now. But because we are at the very, very beginning of this consciousness evolution, all right, this spiritual, this global awakening, there is a lot of misinformation out there because people don't have a roadmap yet. They cannot discern these energies. And here now is where all the problems with entities and beings and etheric attacks comes in, because people are afraid of this. They don't know. And if they go and think they can learn about these things in the weekend or watching YouTube videos, my own YouTube explainer videos included, then we are running into a huge, big specialness trap, namely thinking that, because I know this now, this that means I'm chosen, or that means I'm a starseed, or that means, I'm a special soul. And those things are their fodder for the dark. So let's talk about the darkness here, and what dark and light and what, things from Star Wars and Harry Potter and so forth that we have in the back of our minds. If you can agree that, creation itself, okay, is something that must come from, a higher intelligence, or at least a higher dimension, all right, because we have not created ourselves, all right. We take our creation as granted, we take it for granted, but we have not done this ourselves. However, there is a part in us that can link into this and that can create, and that is our consciousness. So if you let go of all the contextualization with God and so forth, and if we just sort of define, the source of creation, okay, as the word divine right now, just for the lack of better words for these things, all right, then you'll understand that every sentient living being here on this planet, but also perhaps in other dimensions that we can't even see. Our mind is limited to 3D. We can't even measure time from within ourselves, which would be the fourth dimension. All right, so that there is something higher dimensional that has brought us into creation. Now, does this mean that there are ETs out there, or aliens that have created us, or does this mean that there is a God out there, or what does this mean? Let's take all judgment aside here, and trying to sort of compartmentalize this, and just look at life itself. All right, the force of light. Okay, what we know today is that the force of life, all right, is linked to the force of light. All right, and so that's why we unconsciously, all right, we all unconsciously refer to it this way. The good guys, the good forces, as light forces, okay, as the light. It's somehow linked with the light, and light is a part of it, but it's not all of it, all right. There's also other aspects of creation, but this is the easiest one for us to relate to, and therefore our collective unconscious has created sort of the anti-light. What is the anti-light? What is the part that goes against it? Is darkness, the absence of light. But the truth here is a little more complex than that, but we can work with this. We can work with this concept, all right, to understand, what dark forces are. Dark forces are forces that are not divine, that do not stem from the source of life, all right, that do not have life or the creation of life as their agenda, okay? If you look at it in this sort of super down-to-earth way, all right, then you can get a little better understanding for it, and also understand what it really is when we talk about etheric attacks. That is attacked. What is attacked when we feel attacked? It is our life force. And that is how we learn to discern light from dark forces, not by the pictures that we have in our mind and that are conditioned into us and that are created by these so-called matrix, which is nothing. It's just a different word, really, for sort of the structure of the collective energies and how they are being sort of programmed into us. right? Uh, if we understand that we have to let go of all these preformed programs, all right, and just understand it as, light equals life and darkness equals anti-life. Okay, so taking life away. And this is why, we have these sayings, where there is light, there's shadow, and so forth, and the dark forces seek the light, and they suck the light, and we have all these words like vampirism and stuff like that, that we use in our lingo to express kind of like how this feels like. It literally feels like the living spirit is being sucked out of you, and that is actually correct, but it's a little more complex, because just because we are now awakening to some of these things and we are becoming more aware of it due to the development of our energetic sensitivity, doesn't mean they weren't there before. And it doesn't mean that it's as simple as saying, oh, it's a binary thing, good and bad. It's not like that. It's way more complex out there in the etheric, all right? And our own involvement, and this is the part that people don't want to hear, is vital to understand. Because if I am not fully aware of my own life force and what I am focusing on and what I am fostering and what I am harboring and what I am ingesting and what I'm exposing myself to, what I'm aligning myself to, what I am feeding within me, then it is impossible for me to discern outer energies that are coming in, and to recognize perhaps the nature of this attack. So what is an attack now? When I have a nightmare and it shows me the deepest darkness within myself, all right, so whom can I blame? Is this like some dark entity sucking the life force out of me? Or is this a protection mechanism of my own ego, my own unconscious, all right, to not let me sort of deal with my own shadow? And this is why people like me and anyone here in this energy healing and sort of energy awareness business, if they're integrous and if they are truthful with people, they will say to them that this has to do with your inner energies. And the number one rule when it comes to etheric energies and etheric immunity and etheric defense and protection is to know yourself. So what does all this night terror and so forth do to us? It forces us to face our own shadow, these parts of our unconscious that we don't want to deal with, that we are afraid of, that remind us of trauma, or that we simply can't contextualize. And therefore, the ABC of defense against the dark arts is not to know all these cool symbols and fancy techniques, and spells and all that. This is the problem with Harry Potter and so forth. The essence, the instrument here of learning how to defend yourself and build etheric immunity, against dark forces, is to know yourself and to understand how you are part of this. And in the article that I'm referring to, I'm dividing etheric attacks into 3 major groups. And this is part of the learning now, guys, and the education. And it's also a good thing that you hear me out here, because I told you in the beginning that, the main way these the unknown or the dark can feed off of us, okay, feed off our life force, is due to our fear. That's one part of how this comes about. So the more we educate ourselves about it, the less fear we have. Okay, and so this fear of the unknown that comes from our ego mind, all right, that is promoted through that, is a big part of our resilience and immunity to its etheric attacks, because we have to overcome this, all right? We have to really deal with these things. And the first kind of etheric attack is, and this is also the most common one, is the one that comes actually from within ourselves, where it's our own unconscious darkness, or the shadow parts of us, the parts of us that we cannot love about ourselves, that we think are bad, or that we shove into the deepest, darkest corner, or that we cannot see yet, or that were taken away from us, maybe through abuse or, things such as gaslighting and manipulation. And here were the majority of the questions, by the way, that I received in regards to etheric attacks, which I will cover here in a minute. But these parts about ourselves, they can only be illuminated if we have the willingness really to go in there and to work with ourselves, because this is the part that even as someone who does etheric surgery, who does etheric clearings on people and who helps them out in emergency situations like this, this is where your own self-healing can't grip if you are not really willing to see your own part in it. Okay, so this is the hardest part here for most of the spiritual folks out there, to understand that your own inner darkness plays a major role. All right, and these night terrors, if you really, really look at the nature of them, they're playing directly into the things that you are either completely unaware of, that you are afraid of, which is often tied into completely unaware or unknown to you. They play into your own shadow, okay, into your own specialness, or into your own victimhood, or into, things that you have, used to justify things in front of you, or that that you've used to be right, or to sort of create the sort of your own alternative reality. Okay, it attacks that. It attacks your specialness. Okay, like, oh no, I can withstand this. I can, I'm better than this. My ego knows better. Okay, and it attacks toxicity and passivity in you that you have accumulated through, say, the exposure that you have, the relationships that you're in, and so forth. But it's very important to understand that these are all part of your darkness, okay, and your fears. And one of the things that I've found working with people over the years is that this religious pre-programming that most of us have, even if we don't go to church, or we all have a pre-programming through religion, the context, in which we see things like, heaven and hell, God and Satan and so forth. This binary view, of good and bad. That is, and also the fear of punishment and so forth. That's a big part of why we feel so powerless, because we have externalized our power to some kind of imaginary higher authority. And, the big part of this learning how to protect ourselves and how to defend ourselves against etheric attacks is really to reverse this and to empower ourselves to know that, how we can take our power back and how we can actually choose our reality, even in our dreams and in our visions. So, the first biggest cluster here is really our own unconscious. And then the second one is the one that comes in through collective energies, the culmination of all these people's dreams and fears and so forth. By the way, there's a kids movie, The Guardians. It's with Santa Claus and so forth. Jack Frost has a very beautiful rendering of this, how the forces of dark and the forces of light, how they can torment us in our sleep. It's a very a beautiful visualization. It obviously is done for kids, but it's very smart. The collective energies, these bands that we are exposed to without really being able to change that, they play into this. So it's just like, say, the seasons, the weather seasons or whatever. There are situations such as the corona situation right now where we just simply have to accept that there is a lot of fear there. There's a lot of anger there. There's a lot of uncertainty there. And yes, in those times, naturally, we will be exposed to a higher intensity level. It's like noise. It's like static, okay, in the background. And yes, what does this mean to us? We have to be, we have to deal with this. We have to learn how to deal with this, okay? We have to learn how to reduce the noise. We have to learn how to calm things down. We have to learn how to work with our neurological system, our nervous system. We have to learn with dealing and managing our energies. Yes, we have to learn energy work. That's all that means, okay? So that's the part that we cannot really control, what comes in from the outside as a sort of a general sort of overlay. But we can learn how to become better managers of our own energy. We can learn how to change the effect that it has on us and what we can do in our daily lives, how we can cultivate this. Thank you, Gloria, for sharing how this training has helped you to understand how the dark was actually drawn to you, to your blind spots. Yes, this is cool. Thank you for sharing, Gloria. This is very healing what you're writing here for everybody who reads this. And the third aspect of etheric attack, or the third kind, and it's often a combination of all three, is the one that is discriminatory, that is directly, against you, that is directed at you, that comes from people or entities or, organizations, if you will, not to feed into any conspiracy theories, but there are etheric attacks that are specifically, geared towards, doing something to you. So we all experience this again here on a collective level in form of collective gaslighting, guys, and fake news, and all that plays into this matrix stuff and powers to be and all this, just to give you a roadmap here where all this belongs. Yes, but more so, also in things such as our overall attitude towards food, towards meds, towards drugs, towards escapism, towards social media, towards technology, and so forth. Those are things that are directly geared. They're coming from somewhere. There's a trajectory there. Okay. And some of them are even more specific, just geared towards us individually. And this can come from people, from organizations or groups of people. This can come, through most of what most of you probably think right now is curses, or things such as abductions, or all kinds of things that you see in the movies, like a possession or something like that. Let me assure you that these are the fewest of all cases. So 98% of all the etheric attacks, they have to do with these other types that I've talked about. But even when things are directed towards you, like say an ex-partner, or the narcissist that you live with or used to live with, or your family, or the feuding faction, okay, or something that goes specifically against you, all right, there still is a lot you can do about these things, but at the beginning of it is always you understanding your part in this, your blind spots, as Gloria mentioned, but also, sort of how you feed this, how you allow toxicity in your life, what you accept as normal, what you agree to, what you subconsciously agree to. But I want to give you a few tips here and move into sort of what you can do real quick. Again, this is a year-long training, guys, so please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to simplify this. But even on my own YouTube channel, I have multiple courses and trainings, free training resources there. But I've obviously created programs for people, that require years and years of dedication. But also a 12-month program, which I would strongly recommend to you, because this is something that can up your awareness in really fast time. Within like 2-3 months, you begin to see the world differently. It's called the Sacred Self-Healing course. Sorry for promoting this, but I'm not monetizing my videos. So if people want to know what I actually do, I have to say it here in these videos. But I want you to know that, every time you think of a person, every time you gossip about a person, every time you have an opinion and a judgment about a person, all right, this sends energy, etheric energy, to this person. Every time you dream about a person, every time you fantasize about a person, now you can imagine that if there are people out there who do this to you, all right, that there are possibly attacks or coming from them without them even knowing, just as much as you might actually etherically attack other people without you being aware of it. And this is a big part of learning about your own energies, because it isn't until you realize how much you actually attack other people that you realize how much of these etheric attacks are coming out of fear of insanity from people that know you, or from people that you are having ties with. Okay, and we have, again, here it gets a little more complex. Then we also have karmic ties with people. But if we have, or if we are living in a relationship, for instance, that fosters, degradation, exploitation, and sort of sucking, sort of parasitic kind of lifestyles, okay, on whatever level, of, physical, emotional, mental, or even spiritual level. And this can also apply to groups, and cults and so forth. All right. Whenever we agree to this, whenever we foster this, we are basically giving them an entryway. We are opening a channel to this, and we're allowing this from coming in. And these questions that I've received, in times like this, where there was an intense density of these collective energies, is it common that, these ties that we can have to other people, like say, people in in your past, all right? So people that you've experienced some karmic ties with, or people that you've identified as exploitative, the narcissists and the vampires in your life, all right, that they can get to you more easily, or that the mere fact that you are aware of them doing this, that you are under a heavier attack. The answer is yes or no. Yes and no, sorry. And one is because the overall condition is so that your system is probably already sensitized. The other one is that you are also tapping more into your own fears and own darkness, which makes you more susceptible. Okay, so this is the susceptibility here. You are more open now, you're more raw, and that's when it becomes a lot easier for, darkness to come in. But the other one is also that you are thinking more of them. And this is the part here that you can take from me as an experienced energy clearer, guys. Most of the energetic ties, the unwanted energetic ties, and also the unwanted absorption from energies through others, guys, happens because you are feeding it. You are feeding into it, even just, thinking about them, or, even if you're angry at them, okay, this opens up a canal for them to come back to you. So the only way to cut those ties is through no contact on all levels, including the etheric level. And we are very busy with teaching people things like this, because this is one of the most common sort of phenomenon in our lives, that we feel sort of etherically stalked or etherically manipulated by other people in our lives. And we have to untrain ourselves. We have to, become more aware of our energetic habits and learn how to protect ourselves from this. But for the most part, I'm anticipating this for you guys, it's you letting go of them. Okay, this is the thing that pulls these energies back in. So absolute no contact, not thinking of them, not saying their names, not vilifying them and externalizing your power to them, because that is a big part of your susceptibility. But again, here there's also interaction with collective stuff, and when we are in times like this where we externalize our energies more, then we are also becoming more susceptible to etheric energies from other people. This said, there is an explainer video about the seventh chakra, the crown chakra, and I want to lead your attention to this here real quick, because I have to come to an end. That if you are, and this is unfortunately something that makes me very, very sad, listening to people out there that think they're experts and they're telling people they should open their crown chakra and they should send their energies up there, is the worst thing that you can do. It makes you a sitting duck, guys. And, projecting your love and your light to others is the worst thing that you can do for etheric defense. It's counterproductive. It's misinformation coming from dark entities, all right, tricking you into basically, putting a tag on yourself so that they can find and harvest your energy, your life force energy, a little more easily. Okay, but there's a lot more to this, obviously. I just want to walk you through here in a nutshell what you can do against etheric attacks. Okay, so number one is that you have to understand that this is all about your consciousness. This is all about this creation energy that is in you, that, you can call it light. It's not just light, but resembles it, and it often looks that way, all right, that, those entities and those beings who are not of that want that, okay? It's like fodder for them, it's food for them, okay? And once you understand this, that there is a sacredness about your own energy, every thought, every dream, every emotion, every idea, every output that you have, every action is an expression of your life force, guys, and how sacred that is. Once you understand this, once you understand why people like me talk about embodiment, becoming aware that you're a soul with a body and not a body with a soul. There's a sacredness to this, and everything that desegregates it, all right, is dark, all right? This needs to be protected in you. Okay, and you can only learn this if you're open for the spiritual aspects of things. I'm not talking about a specific religion or school. I'm talking about understanding what the nature of this your consciousness and your life force, what that is. And to understand that the embodiment of it, to fill it up with you, is the short answer here to etheric defense. Because most of us neither know about it nor inhabit it. And it's like an open house with open windows, open doors, completely wasting life force away and inviting, these parasitic dark forces in. Okay? How can you do this? Okay, first and foremost, you have to become willing to discern the energies within yourself, to pay attention to your own states. When you go into this passive, powerless, helpless mode, okay, you are literally, opening your doors even wider, okay, because it tells these dark forces, okay, that you have no clue, all right, you're like easy fodder, okay. You have to learn to deal with your fears. You have to become more resilient, and often this also means that you have to become a little more mature. This is the beauty of this overall situation that we're dealing with right now. We're being forced to mature. We're being forced to grow up. We're being forced to become conscious. All right? And then as you go, you have to become a better energy manager with yourself. You have to observe your own, ups and downs, how things oscillate within yourself and how things make you feel. Do they feel like they're alive, promoting? Is this good for me? Is this supporting me? Is this helping me? Or is this sucking me dry? And you got to eradicate these things out of your life, your daily habits, guys, because everything that sucks life out of you that you are, agreeing to is like oh yeah, I'm part of this, the dark club. Okay, so your alignment. Okay, you've got to, of course, be more conscientious about what you let in altogether. This includes your food, guys. This includes the shows that you watch, the music that you listen to, the news, the kind of social media that you pay attention with. Your attention is part of your life force, guys. Every second that you spend on somebody else determines the energy of where, sort of what you are aligning yourself to. You need to be very, very careful. Again, you understand that this is sacred. Your energy is sacred. A lot of people forget to ever ask this question: why would the dark even be after the light? If you think this thought all the way to the end, then you will understand the truth of all of this. You need to work on, forming your own lexicon, your own roadmap, okay? And this, you obviously need guides for, you need teachers for this, just like how you need to learn the ABCs of your language from a teacher. That's okay. It's no big deal, but it doesn't happen overnight, okay? This requires a little bit of, cultivation, a little bit of patience and dedication. But everybody can do this. Everybody can read energies. Everybody will be able to feel energies and interpret them correctly, okay? Understand that energy is a two-way street. It's never you just on your own. You are coming from a bigger consciousness, okay? And in that way, we are also all connected. And everything that you send out there, all right, has an effect on the collective and vice versa, and also the people involved here, okay? Understand that your heart connection is the gateway to your soul. All right, so this is where mindfulness and soulfulness and all this comes in. Meditation, learning how to calm your mind, body, and emotions down helps you to verify all these things that I am talking about. It helps you to experience them for yourselves. All right, and this comes through learning how to, turn the volume of this outer noise, these collective energies down, and make your own voice come forward more, so you can hear your own voice, because your true self, which is the mediator between your soul and your conscious ego self, informs you about things. It has constantly information for you, and signals and things that can help you to discern better. But we don't hear it. It's those blind spots, right? Understand that, that in this skilled mastery, all right, of your own energies, your mastery of outer energies, it just comes as a result. So it's not important to focus on what are all these dark entities that are out there and knowing more about them, because the more you educate yourself on that, the more you align yourself to that. You hear me? Spiritual warriorism and all that is a form of specialness, guys, that pulls you, aligns you to darkness. Okay. Now, is somebody as an effective or experienced, defender against the dark arts, someone who has had to experience this? Yes, but not all of us are designed that way. All right, so we are not all designed to face the dark. Some of us are, and those of us need special training. Okay, just like how not all of us are talented musicians. Okay, we all have different talents. We all have a different medicine. You need to discover this. All right, but overall, my tip for those of you who are just starting with the awareness about this is to do not focus on the dark energies, because that aligns you to them, makes it even easier for them to get to you. All right, and understand that this is a lifelong thing. Okay, yes, dream rehearsing and lucid dreaming and all this can help you. Even plant medicine sometimes, but not marijuana. I talked about this 100 million times. Increases your fragmentation. Is an open invitation for etheric energies, guys. If you think that you can smoke pot to alleviate yourself from etheric attacks, you are completely, entirely, 100% wrong. It is the opposite. This is misinformation. Sorry, I know most of you don't want to hear this, but this needs to be said. It's very dangerous, especially for our kids. Do not allow your kids to smoke pot. Only through this kind of training, through this kind of resilience, that you have to form through internalizing all of this, can you really form the sovereignty and a stance that allows you to defend yourself against etheric attacks. And until then, you need a guide. Until then, you need a teacher, and this is what I do. So I hope that this lecture here, really, there wasn't much interaction today, although your posts are really beautiful. Thank you, guys. Yes, please read the comments here, and please continue to comment. Okay, check out the transCODES website if you want to learn more about this. If you want to, see what programs I have, I'm going to come out with a new version of an older program here very soon that will be very affordable. But for the most part, this is something that you have to be willing to see as a lifelong purpose, a lifelong quest. Okay, and those of you who are out there and ask yourself, what is my purpose in life here? Who am I? You will find the answers there, guys. All right, so don't externalize your powers. Don't think that you are powerless. All right, the moment you think that, you become powerless. So it's really a shift in your mindset as well as your etheric and spiritual understanding the context. All right, so I hope this helped you a little bit, guys. Come back next Sunday. Sign up for my email list and follow here the transCODES Facebook and YouTube pages, because there's a lot of extra articles and info that I post there regularly. And if you really want to get the depth of it, then sign up for my Patreon. I have a lot of premium content there just for people who really want to go deeper. Love you guys. Stay safe. See you next Sunday. Bye-bye.